Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really diving deep, tackling the life and work of William Friedkin, a filmmaker whose career, well, it wasn't just peaks and valleys, was it? It was more like a series of massive explosions and shockwaves.
Absolutely. Friedkin, active from 1935 right up to 2023. He's absolutely central to that new Hollywood wave in the 70s.
Yeah.
Director, producer, screenwriter.
But just calling him New Hollywood feels, I don't know, incomplete. It misses that wild, almost contradictory nature of his career. You called him the agnostic auteur of extremes.
That's exactly, because that's the paradox, isn't it? That's what we want to unpack for you today. How does one person deliver these world-changing hits? I mean, films that didn't just succeed, they rewrote the rules. Think The French Connection, think The Exorcist.
Right, absolute game changers. And then almost immediately follow them up with these crushing, deeply personal failures. Like Sorcerer. The story behind that one is just legendary in its failure.
And then, the kicker, the really unexpected turn, is how that whole turbulent ride leads him in the last part of his life to become a director of all things, high-end European opera. It's a career built on this fierce, uncompromising vision.
Yeah, where massive success and total catastrophe were just flip sides of the same coin.
Exactly.
And that duality, that's the real hook here. We're talking about a guy who gets the Oscar for Best Director, Best Picture for French Connection, gives us The Exorcist, which, I mean, you could argue is the greatest horror film ever, period.
No question. It's always in the conversation.
And yet, decades on, he's making these really tight, critically loved films based on stage plays, like Bug or Killer Joe.
And his very last film, The Caine Mutiny Court-Martial, which came out just after he passed, fits right into that late-stage pattern, a return to that theatrical structure.
And his personal life seemed just as intense. 2 sons, Cedric and Jack, married 4 times. Jean Moreau, the iconic actress, was one wife. And Sherry Lansing, the producer, was his wife when he died in August 2023. Heart failure and pneumonia at 87.
Yeah, he was, by all accounts, engaged and fighting right up to the very end, just like his films.
Okay, so to really get where that ferocious, sometimes really unsettling intensity in his films comes from, we got to go back to his beginnings in Chicago. Born there, August 29, 1935. His whole foundation seems built on, well, survival and displacement.
Yeah, the roots are crucial. His parents were Jewish immigrants. They came from Ukraine, which was part of the Russian Empire back then. And it wasn't just casual integration. His family, grandparents, and parents, they had to flee. There was a really horrific anti-Jewish pogrom in 1903.
Wow. So that's the backdrop. That experience of being forced out, of persecution, that must seep in.
Absolutely. That's the bedrock. Resilient, born from terrible adversity. He grew up lower middle class. His father, Louis, sounds like quite a character merchant seaman, semi-pro softball player, sold men's clothes later on.
And his mother, Rachel, was a nurse. Friedkin apparently called her a saint. But the relationship with his father sounds like it was complicated.
Oh, very much so. Complex is the word. You see film historians pointing this out. Often, Friedkin apparently saw his dad with this mix of, affection, but also contempt. Contempt because he felt his father hadn't made more of himself.
Okay, that's interesting. You can almost see that mix in his characters, right? That blend of contradictory drives. Popeye Doyle, Father Karras. These guys are torn.
Exactly. Like that internal conflict, that push-pull, became the engine for so many of his protagonists. Often anti-heroes, driven by these raw, messy feelings. Maybe it's that classic thing, the ambitious son reacting to what he saw as his father's lack of drive.
Makes sense. Though, academically, he wasn't exactly setting the world on fire early on. In high school, he was pretty open about not being a great student.
No, he was more into basketball, apparently even thought about going pro for a bit. But he graduated super young at 16.
16.
He chalked it up to social promotion, basically. Said they just pushed him through, which kind of suggests he moved fast through systems he didn't entirely buy into. But that lack of focus, it vanished the second he hit the working world.
Right, because he landed somewhere immediately. Mailroom at WBKB-TV, straight out of high school. Basic entry-level stuff.
But the climb was just meteoric. It's almost unbelievable. Within 2 years, so he's like 18 years old. He's not in the mailroom anymore. He's directing live TV. He's directing documentaries.
18, directing. That's insane.
It really is. He clearly had this natural instinct for the camera, for capturing things as they happened. It shows he found his calling, instantly. And he poured all that intensity into it.
And he had a really significant early success that kind of foreshadowed his later style, didn't he? That 1962 documentary, The People vs. Paul Crump.
Yes. That film is fascinating because it wasn't just, good TV. It had real teeth. It actually made a difference. It won a big award at the San Francisco Film Festival, sure. But the bigger deal was its impact. It directly helped get Paul Crump's death sentence commuted to life imprisonment.
Okay, so right there, early on, you see the Friedkin signature, taking brutal reality, showing it without flinching, and achieving something high stakes, something real.
Exactly. That success was huge. It gave him credibility, and it landed him a job with a merger documentary producer, David L. Wolper.
That was the springboard then, to Hollywood.
That was the ticket. So 1965, he heads west, documentary skills honed, ready to tackle feature films. But first, a little run-in with royalty, Hollywood royalty anyway.
Alfred Hitchcock, right. He directed an episode of the Alfred Hitchcock Hour.
One of the last ones, yeah.
Wow.
Off-season in 65. And you picture it. Friedkin, the young, scrappy documentarian, maybe a bit rebellious.
And Hitchcock, the absolute master of control, precision, formality.
Right. And the story goes, Hitchcock basically chewed him out. Why? Because Friedkin wasn't wearing a tie on set.
No tie. That's the big crime.
For Hitchcock, maybe it was. It's this perfect little clash of styles, isn't it? The old guard formalist versus the new wave naturalist. You can just imagine Friedkin bristling at that, maybe filing it away.
Yeah, filing it under things I will never do. So his first actual feature film, not exactly a triumph.
No. Good Times in 1967 with Sonny and Cher. He called it unwatchable later. It seems like one of those jobs you take to get your foot in the door, you know? Clearly wasn't his style.
So he learned from that.
Seems like it. He pivoted pretty quickly back towards stuff with more substance, often adapted from the stage, which is interesting given his later career. He did The Birthday Party in 68, based on that really unsettling Harold Pinter play. Then a musical comedy, The Night They Raided Minsky's.
Quite a mix. But the one that really stands out from that early period, maybe, is The Boys in the Band in 1970.
Yeah, that one was important. Adapted from Mark Crowley's play. And it's rightly seen as a landmark in queer cinema. Tackling that subject matter. Gay life in New York. So frankly back then. It showed he could bring that documentary immediacy to really intimate internal stories, too. Stories about communities that hadn't really been seen that way on screen.
So it's this rapid-fire start, right? Documentaries, TV, Hitchcock telling him off, a pop musical flop, Pinter, a groundbreaking queer film. It's kind of chaotic.
Utterly chaotic.
Yeah.
But maybe the perfect volatile mix needed for what came next. The explosion was imminent.
Okay, the 70s. New Hollywood. Directors taking over. And Friedkin doesn't just join the party, he practically kicks the door down in 1971 with The French Connection.
Oh, it was a thunderclap. Like you said,
Yeah.
instantly massive, critically, commercially, it hit like a bomb. And the key was it didn't feel like a Hollywood movie. It felt like something raw, something ripped right off the street.
The critics all picked up on that, right? The documentary style, saying it was almost too real for Hollywood.
And that was deliberate. He talked about how Costa Gavras' film Z, that political thriller from '69, showed him the way. He saw that energy, that feeling of catching things on the fly.
Yeah.
And he wanted that for French Connection. He aimed for a style where, quote, the camera didn't know what was going to happen next. Like it was just desperately trying to keep up.
Which makes the audience feel like they're right there in the middle of the chaos.
Okay.
Especially that car chase.
Oh, the car chase. It's iconic for a reason. It
Yeah.
felt dangerous because, well, it often was. They were really doing it, speeding through actual New York traffic, sometimes without permits, just capturing the mayhem. That sense of reality wasn't faked.
And it worked. Big time. Award season was huge for French Connection.
Dominated it. 5 Oscars, including Best Picture and, crucially, Best Director for Friedkin himself. He also nabbed the Golden Globe, the DGA award. I mean, he was suddenly the guy. An absolute powerhouse.
So how do you top that? Apparently by completely changing gears and revolutionizing another genre entirely. 2 years later, 1973, The Exorcist.
Yeah, from gritty street crime to supernatural horror, based on William Peter Blatty's bestseller. And it's still, I mean, constantly cited as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, horror film ever.
What made it so effective, do you think? Was it applying that same documentary approach?
I think that was a huge part of it.
Yeah.
He grounds it so much in the mundane first. The doctors, the tests, the quiet desperation in the house. It all feels incredibly real. So when the demonic stuff starts...
It feels even more shocking because the foundation is so solid.
Exactly. It feels like an intrusion into our world. It was labeled a religious horror thriller, and it famously got an X rating initially.
An X rating for a major studio picture. That's wild.
It shows you how intense, how visceral it was for audiences at the time. Unprecedented, really. But the establishment had to take notice. 10 Oscar nominations, including Best Director again for Friedkin. It won for screenplay and sound.
So he proved he could bring artistic weight, critical acclaim to even the most controversial genre material.
Absolutely. He was on top of the world. He had all the power, all the creative freedom.
Which, as we know, can be a dangerous thing for an auteur's. What's the classic mistake when you have that kind of blank check?
You chase the dream project, the personal obsession. Interestingly, he, Coppola, and Peter Bogdanovich actually tried to institutionalize their power around then. They formed the Directors Company at Paramount in '73.
Right, I remember hearing about that. What happened?
Well, Coppola made the conversation, Bogdanovich did Daisy Miller, but Friedkin, he clashed with the others, apparently felt constrained, and just walked away. Abruptly.
Huh. So much for collaboration.
Yeah, it kind of killed the company. It really underscores how much he valued his own singular vision above all else, which leads us directly to...
The crash. The fall after the peak. Sorcerer, 1977.
This was the film for him, his passion project. He wanted to remake Henri-Georges Clouzot's 1953 masterpiece, The Wages of Fear. He saw it as this perfect existential thriller. And he went all in. No compromise. Total realism, which meant a hellish production. Mostly shot in the Dominican Republic jungles. The stories are insane disease, terrible weather, trucks falling apart, bridges collapsing, just logistical nightmares constantly. He pushed everyone, including himself, to the absolute limit.
And the budget showed it, right?
Ballooned like crazy. Ended up around $22 million. Now, you have to remember, for 1977, that's a fortune. Like, Close Encounters cost about $20 million that year. This was a gargantuan gamble.
That timing. Oh, the timing.
Could not have been worse. Sorcerer opens exactly 1 week after a little film called Star Wars.
Ouch.
Yeah. Lucas's film just changed everything overnight. Suddenly, everyone wanted upbeat, escapist fantasy, and here comes Friedkin with his gritty, dark, sweaty, existential nightmare about desperate men driving nitroglycerin through hell.
Audiences just weren't having it.
Not at all. It got completely buried, ignored. It was a massive financial disaster. But for Friedkin, it was more than that.
It was personal, right? He considered it his best.
He called it his finest film. To pour everything into that, to believe it's your masterpiece and then have it just evaporate, critically and commercially, swallowed by this pop culture phenomenon, it must have been utterly devastating.
Yeah, a soul-crushing blow, you imagine. And it hurt his career badly.
Big time.
Yeah.
Damaged his reputation, his bankability. He tried to bounce back quickly with the Brinks Job in '78, kind of a crime comedy.
Didn't work either.
Nope. Another commercial disappointment. The golden boy of the early '70s had definitely hit a rough patch. A very public, very painful stumble.
So heading into the '80s, Friedkin still got that reputation right. Uncompromising, tense, and he dives right back into controversy with Cruising in 1980.
Oh, Cruising, yeah, that was something else. Based on a Gerald Walker crime novel, stars Al Pacino as a cop going undercover in New York's gay S&M scene to catch a killer. The subject matter alone was just incendiary for the time.
And the reaction was immediate, wasn't it? Even during filming.
Huge protests. Mostly from gay rights activists who were really concerned, understandably, that the film would just reinforce negative stereotypes, link the community with violence. It was incredibly contentious.
And it still is, right? People still debate that film fiercely, how it portrays that world, its use of identity in a thriller context.
Absolutely. It remains a really complex, debated film. Critically, it got hammered at the time. Commercially, it did. Okay, moderate box office. But the critical reception was brutal. Which brings us back to that amazing Friedkin duality.
Extremes again.
Exactly. Here's the guy with the Oscars, the Golden Globes, and for Cruising, he gets Razzie nominations. Worst Director and Worst Screenplay.
That's incredible. The Razzies. How many directors can claim both? Best Director Oscar and Worst Director Razzie nom.
Not many. It's like the perfect symbol of his career, isn't it?
Right.
Willing to go there, to make the film he wanted to make, regardless of whether the reaction was acclaim or, raspberries.
Right after that whole firestorm, though, things got serious on a personal level. His health?
Yeah, the intensity might have finally caught up. He had a major heart attack, March 6, 1981. Turns out it was due to a genetic defect. It laid him up for months, required serious rehab, a real wake-up call physically.
Must have been terrifying. After surviving that, did his work change?
Well, his next film was kind of different tonally. Deal of the Century in 1983. It was a satire about arms dealing, Chevy Chase and Sigourney Weaver. Trying for dark comedy, maybe. Didn't quite land with audiences used to his thrillers.
And then he did something really unexpected for an Oscar-winning director back then. music videos.
Totally unexpected. It's wild to think about now. A major filmmaker like him jumping into MTV right when it was exploding. He was actually one of the first really high-profile film directors to do it.
Which ones did he do?
Laura Branigan's Self-Control in 1984. That video is super moody, very atmospheric, very 80s. And then he did Barbra Streisand's version of Somewhere from West Side Story in 85.
It shows adaptability, I guess, applying his visual style to this totally different commercial format.
Definitely. But he didn't stay away from his signature genre for long. He came roaring back with a really strong crime thriller in 85, To Live and Die in L.A.
Yes. William Peterson, Willem Dafoe, that one got great reviews.
It's a huge critical favorite. People saw it as a major return to form. Lots of comparisons to The French Connection, especially because of another absolutely insane car chase sequence.
The one on the freeway, going the wrong way.
That's the one. Shot against traffic on the L.A. freeway.
Yeah.
Just pure Friedkin adrenaline. That raw, chaotic energy was back in full force.
So the late 80s into the 90s, he stuck with thrillers and horror mostly.
Pretty much. He did a courtroom thriller called Rampage in 87, which Roger Ebert actually gave a thumbs up to. Friedkin wrote and produced that one too.
Okay.
Then there was a supernatural horror film, The Guardian, in 1990, which has kind of become a cult thing. But maybe the most revealing film from this period, in terms of his mindset, was Jade in 1995.
The erotic thriller with David Caruso and Linda Fiorentino, that one didn't do well, did it?
Critically savaged, audiences hated it, a definite dud. But here's the thing. Friedkin himself later said Jade was one of his favorite films that he directed.
Seriously. After French Connection and Exorcist, he picks Jade.
It tells you everything, doesn't it? It shows that the absolute disaster of Sorcerer, that critical and commercial rejection, it never broke his own internal measure of success. If he felt he'd achieved what he set out to do, if it was true to his vision, then the external reaction, positive or negative, just didn't matter in the same way. He kept following his own beat.
Okay, so moving into the 2000s, the century turns, and Friedkin gets a nice reminder of his own legacy, right?
Yeah, The Exorcist gets re-released in 2000, the version you've never seen, the director's cut with extra footage, and it's a hit all over again. It makes like $40 million just in the U.S., shows the staying power.
And this period also marks a really interesting return for him stylistically. Back to adapting stage plays, kind of a full circle from Birthday Party and Boys in the Band.
Exactly. And he found a perfect collaborator in the playwright Tracy Letts. He directed 3 films based on Letts' work, and they were all really well received critically. A definite late career resurgence.
First one was Bug in 2006 with Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon.
Right. He saw the play in 2004 and apparently felt this immediate connection, said he felt metaphorically on the same page as Letts. He was drawn to that claustrophobic, intense, dialogue-heavy story. And it paid off. The film won the Fipresci Prize at the Cannes Film Festival.
Fipresci, that's the International Film Critics Award.
Yep, a big deal, especially at Cannes. It signaled that the serious film world was recognizing this as a significant comeback artistically.
Then came Killer Joe in 2011, also Letts. That one starred Matthew McConaughey in a really startling role.
Oh yeah, the reconnaissance was partly fueled by roles like that. It's a super dark comedy, very shocking. Premiered at Venice, it got great reviews again, critics loved it. But commercially, not so much.
Why not? If the reviews were good.
It got slapped with an NC-17 rating, mostly for violence and some pretty graphic sexual content. And, you know, an NC-17 is basically the kiss of death commercially. Limits advertising, limits where it can play.
So, classic Friedkin again. Uncompromising vision, even if it hurts the box office.
Textbook. He clearly wasn't going to soften the material to get an R rating. Artistic integrity over commercial prospects. Even with great reviews, it just couldn't find a wide audience.
And the final film in that Letts trilogy, and his last film overall, was the Caine Mutiny Court-Martial. Finished just before he died, debuted posthumously at Venice in 2023.
A fitting end to that cycle.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just movies in this late period. He also went back to TV, interestingly.
Right. He directed a couple episodes of CSI.
Yeah, the original CSI. Crime scene investigation. He did one called Cockroaches, and then he directed their big 200th episode, Mascara, which is cool because it reunited him with William Peterson.
The star of To Live and Die in L.A.
Exactly. So you see him comfortable revisiting collaborators, revisiting formats like TV where he started, applying that intense, focused style to episodic storytelling.
And he even went back to documentaries, didn't he? But with a very Friedkin twist.
He did.
Yeah.
In 2017, he released The Devil and Father Amorth, which is just wild when you think about it.
How so?
Well, it's a documentary about Father Gabriele Amorth, the Vatican's chief exorcist, performing the ninth exorcism on a particular woman in Italy. So he's taking the subject matter of his most famous movie, The Exorcist.
And tackling it for real as a documentarian.
Exactly, like he did with Paul Crump way back when, applying that objective observational camera to this incredibly charged supernatural subject, seeking truth in the mystery. It's the perfect synthesis of his career extremes.
But the biggest surprise, the thing nobody saw coming, was the opera. He's becoming a major opera director.
It's genuinely astonishing, and this wasn't just like a little side project. He directed opera professionally internationally from 1998 right up until near the end of his life. It was a serious second career.
What's so surprising about it, though? He worked with actors, he understood drama.
But think about the control. Friedkin's film signature was often about capturing chaos, right? That documentary feel, unpredictable locations, the camera struggling to keep up. Opera is the polar opposite.
How do you mean?
It's total structure. The music is set, the libretto is fixed, the timing is incredibly precise. There's very little room for improvisation in the way he worked on film. It's all about interpretation within incredibly rigid constraints.
So maybe he found that structure freeing after decades of battling chaos on film sets.
That's a great way to put it. Maybe he needed that discipline, that formality.
Yeah.
And the scale of his opera work shows how serious he was. He did Berg's Wozik in Florence in '98, double bill of Bartók's Duke Bluebeard's Castle and Puccini's Gianni Schicchi for the LA Opera in 2002, Strauss's Salome in Munich in 2006.
Wow, these are major works, major houses.
Absolutely. And it continued late Verdi's Rigoletto back in Florence in 2015. This wasn't dabbling. It was a deep dive into a completely different artistic world, one defined by tradition and structure, standing in stark contrast to the raw energy of French Connection.
It just shows his constant need to explore different ways of expressing himself, I guess. Capturing the moment or interpreting the score.
Constantly pushing, constantly exploring. And alongside all this, he managed to write his memoir, The Friedkin Connection, published in 2013, getting his own story down before that final film, Caine Mutiny, came out after he was gone.
So to really understand the guy who could make The Exorcist and then direct Salome at the opera, we need to touch on his own beliefs, right? His philosophy.
Yeah, it's pretty key. He was raised Jewish, but later in life he described himself as an agnostic.
Agnostic, meaning unsure about God's existence.
Essentially, yes. But it wasn't a simple dismissive agnosticism. He actually clarified it. He said he strongly believed in the teachings of Jesus Christ. And he felt that while things like God and the soul were ultimately unknowable mysteries, anyone who outright denied God was being dishonest about what he called the mystery of fate.
The mystery of fate. That feels very relevant to his films.
Hugely relevant. That sense that life can just be upended by random chance, by forces beyond our control, that's everywhere in his work. Think about the sheer arbitrary cruelty in French Connection, the random horror of possession in The Exorcist, the absolutely doomed nature of the mission in Sorcerer. His characters are always battling fate, battling this indifferent, mysterious universe.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. What about his film influences? Who shaped him? It sounds like it wasn't just Hollywood.
Definitely not just Hollywood, especially early on. He always pointed to the great European directors and Kurosawa, Jean-Luc Godard, Fellini, Truffaut. Those are the names he mentioned. The giants of world cinema.
Any specific films that were touchstones for him?
He talked a lot about Henri-Georges Clouzot, not just Wages of Fear, which obviously obsessed him enough to remake it as Sorcerer, but also Clouzot's other masterpiece, the psychological thriller Le Diabolique. That one clearly left a mark.
And Hitchcock. Besides the tie incident.
Oh, Psycho. He said he watched Psycho over and over again, studied its construction, its suspense, and that documentary influence never faded either. He cited Harvest of Shame, that 1960 TV doc about migrant workers, as being really fundamental to his understanding of how powerful, raw, observed reality could be on camera.
What about Citizen Kane? Isn't that the film everyone says inspired him as a kid?
That's the common story, the myth almost. But Friedkin himself actually corrected that. He said, no, he didn't see Citizen Kane until 1960, when he was already 25. And that's when it hit him. That's when he really became a serious student of film, a true cineast.
Interesting. So the conversion came later than people thought. And just to circle back on his style, that breakthrough with French Connection, it really came down to seeing Z.
That seems to be the catalyst, yeah. Costa-Gavras' films showed him how to merge that documentary energy, that feeling of immediacy, with a fictional narrative.
That documentary-like realism wasn't just style, it was technique.
It was a conscious choice. He wanted the camera to feel like it just stumbled onto the scene, capturing things as they happened, injecting that feeling of unpredictability, almost danger, which he pulled off perfectly in French Connection.
So when you look at his whole career, all the awards, it's just such a story of contrasts.
Incredible contrast. He got huge honors later in life. The Golden Lion for Lifetime Achievement at Venice in 2013, other big awards in Munich, Saturn Awards, recognition from the industry that he was a major figure, a lasting influence.
But you always have to mention the other side.
You have to, because how many filmmakers win the Oscar, win Golden Globes, and also get nominated for a Razzie for Worst Director? It's almost unheard of. He was just completely unwilling to bend his vision, whether that led to glory or disaster.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the takeaway on William Friedkin?
I think his career is just uniquely defined by these incredibly sharp turns, these extremes, right? And this absolute unwavering commitment to whatever he saw as artistic truth. He mastered that blend of documentary grit and narrative punch, creating films that shook the industry.
But that same intensity, that refusal to compromise.
Led to some spectacular flameouts, especially Sorcerer, the film he loved most, which became this symbol of noble failure. He was this agnostic auteur, always digging for something raw, something true, whether it was on the streets, in a demonic possession, in a tightly wound stage play, or even within the rigid structure of grand opera. Always searching.
Which brings us back to that shadow, doesn't it? The shadow of Sorcerer.
Yeah.
When you have these monumental early hits, French Connection, the Exorcist films that changed the world, how does a failure, that personal, that catastrophic, especially for a film you believe is your masterpiece, how does that haunt you? How does it shape every choice you make for the next, 40 years?
Does it make you play it safer? Or does it just make you double down, become even more defiant, pushing towards the next risk, the next controversy, or maybe seeking refuge in the absolute control of something like opera?
That's the question he leaves us with, isn't it? The ultimate mystery of fate in his own tumultuous, brilliant, and utterly uncompromising career.